Well, thanks for joining us here in the Commons. My name is Michael Warren. I'm one of your pastors here at Change Point. And if you know me, you know that I'm passionate about the gospel and the church and relationship. But what we are going to talk about today has been a ministry that I have been so honored to be a part of for the past 11 years. And I'm joined by some of my great friends. Dave Cronick is here, Brock Fitzgerald, Chaz Fitzgerald, and we're going to talk about Modern Day Nights. I have 3 sons. And so this ministry has meant a whole lot to me. But before we even get started, let's define, what are we talking about today? Raising a Modern Day Night. Dave, if you were to explain Raising a Modern Day Night to somebody who had absolutely no idea of what it was, why it mattered, what would you say?
30,000-foot view would be Raising a Modern Day Night is a program designed to help dads set a vision for manhood for their boys. And to give them the tools to communicate through that vision really throughout their life, not just as a child, but all the way up through adolescence and then into young manhood and then beyond. And it's a framework that a community of men can gather around, gather together, and work together to see the next generation of godly men develop.
Yeah, tremendous, huge vision. Transferring and communicating a vision of manhood for young people. And I can't think of a more important thing and a more important task for dads and the church to engage in together, because the culture will offer a vision of manhood. And I think as we look out to culture and as we look out to all of the things that are informing that, social media, Hollywood, et cetera, there are lots of different visions of manhood that are out there. And what I love about Raising a Modern Day Night is it is a multi-year effort in the life of a young man to empower a dad to transmit and to translate the message of biblical manhood, which is great. And so we have some dads with us today to talk about that. And Chaz, I would love for you to share from your perspective. You've been involved in this program for over a decade and care a lot about what we're talking about. Tell us from your perspective as a dad, what is Modern Day Nights? Why does it matter? Tell us.
Yeah, also a great overview, Dave, on that too. It's just the overarching, what it is, I believe as well, is it's the intentional teaching of authentic biblical manhood to the next generation. And I like the use of creative, memorable events and ceremony to kind of spike that, and as we desire to teach our boys what it looks like to follow after Christ in authentic manhood. So for me personally as a dad, Beth and I, we've been blessed with to be able to raise and teach 3 boys. Right here, one of them, Ben, Brock, and Blake. And of course, 2 of those, Ben and Brock, they're out on their own, have their own families right now. And then our third, Blake, he's just finishing up his high school year here in a couple months. He's 18. So it's hard for me to probably answer that question of what it's meant for me as a dad without, at least when I think of it, that question right away, I am just taken back. It seems like yesterday, I'm sure it's the same for you guys, of really, holding that little baby boy in my arms the first time and feeling the weightiness of that moment. And as Dan and the Psalms say, the weight, the gravitas of the significance of what it's going to be from my relationship as a father to that son and the significance of that relationship. And so I felt a lot of weight and the importance of that, but I didn't know much more other than that. I just knew that I wanted to be, like all of us young dads, wanted to be an active and an intentional dad. But again, I didn't know how I was going to get there, what it would look like, but that's how I definitely got started, like most young dads. Well, fast forward a few years, and we were living down in Little Rock, and I had an opportunity to attend a couple semester class with Robert Lewis of men's fraternity, which a lot of us have had an opportunity to do. And then the next year, Dan Jarrell taught it down there as well. And that was the first time I heard really succinctly what what it looked like to be, what it looked like to live as a authentic biblical man following after Christ's example of manhood. And I was excited. I was excited because I was like, wow, I really connected with this. And all the men around me, we all connected with it. We were really excited about it. But what I was mostly excited about is like, oh, all of a sudden I got something to give away to my boys. And I, like you, Michael and Dave, super excited about that same principle you guys said, is just like, now I got something to give the boys. And I was excited about that. So then 2002, we were back up living in Alaska, and I got a personal invite to a meeting of some guys that were getting together, just like our meeting next week, same meeting, an informational meeting about dads getting together, and how about we get together and let's talk about what it looks like to raise our sons intentionally in view of raising a modern day knight. The principles kind of led through the book by Robert Lewis by the same title. And so Dave Titus invited me, and I got to sit across the table from him and Jeff Schultz, and at the time my boys were little.
Yeah.
They weren't even of age yet.
No,
kind of like
that's when I got started. My boys were 3, and they're like, "What are you doing here?" I'm like,
Yeah.
"Are you kidding? I'm getting ready. This is too important to
I
not
remember talking
engage."
to you about
Yeah.
that just years ago. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, you were ready. You were excited, just like I was. And now we're just eagerly waiting for the boys to come of that age, and just the excitement of that. But I just wanted to say I just really appreciated those guys, those men, those 2 guys in particular, that invested in me as a young dad. They were patient with me, and they just modeled for me just a little bit ahead of life of what they were doing with their sons. Made me excited about it. So it's kind of fast forward through those years. Ben, Brock, and Blake, they've all kind of gone through this process that started, and I've been fortunate just having those 3 boys. They've kind of grown off of each other in their own enthusiasm as well. So by the time Blake kind of started, he already knew all the language, and he was pretty stoked and ready to go as well. So from a practical standpoint, I guess I'll mention what it's done for me as my family, as a dad, is it's given us a common teaching and a common language around which we can talk about life events as young men seeking and moving towards manhood. And the beauty of it is this, like you mentioned, this is not a one and done kind of a thing. This is not an event driven thing. It's something that morphs and changes our trajectory of life, really. And that's what we want. And we want to continue to pass that trajectory on to our kids. So what's happened for us, and a huge blessing for me as a dad, and this is one of the sweetest parts, is that my boys, they struggle with things. I struggle with things. We're challenged by things. But when we're faced with those situations, we can sit down together, and they challenge me the same way now as I challenge them, and they pursue me, and that is such a sweet thing for a dad. In these same principles, we say, well, what does it look like to expect God's great reward in this situation? What does it look like to really reject passivity here? And so we can kind of get down to the meat and potatoes of what we need to do. So that's been a huge blessing to me. And so I guess no matter what process you use, whether you use this process or another one, but as you desire as a dad to lead your son into this process of learning what it means to be a man, an authentic man based on Christ's example and modeling of manhood, we're going to be changed. We as dads are going to be changed. And we hope the same for our boys.
Yeah, it's just really good. When I think about raising a modern day knight, I think, is this a ministry to boys or is this a ministry to dads? and I have over all the years that I've been involved, it's a ministry to I think dads, and I would say mentors of young men, because sometimes dad's not in the picture, right? And so we have mentors that also join up with this. And it's a ministry to them because it gives them the language and kind of a core understanding so that they can do life with this young person, their son or whoever they're mentoring, and have a common language and have a way to talk about life when it comes through the lens of biblical manhood. And I love that, There are so many things that we're involved in nowadays. You want your kid to learn piano? What do? You give them to a piano teacher, and the expectation is they're going to come out of that time with that piano teacher. They're going to know how to do something. Same thing with a coach. Dads and mentors, the God-given mentors or the spiritual fathers, they are the people that God has embedded in the lives of young people to transfer biblical manhood. And so I feel like the church's responsibility is to equip dads to do all this and to go there, which is exciting. But your son is here. Let's hear from him. You got so you've kind of grown up through I'd say really you've grown up through this program, but even more a household that really kind of embraced these things. Tell us from your perspective as a what are you now, young man, right? How old are you? It might be
24.
important for people. 24? Okay. So 24, you've kind of grown up through this program from your perspective. What matters?
Yeah. I liked how you kept saying over and over the process. And I think it is a great program that equips a process of discipleship and modeling and things like that. So when I think back to it, I started in the program when I was 12, but I started in the process whenever you took the initiative to start to do that. And so when I look back, there are the cool events, the ceremonies and things like that were important and good things to look back on. But what's been so valuable is to see people modeling and taking the initiative to start to disciple. And that's kind of been my experience with it. The program is awesome and I love it. And it equips the process. And that has been really cool. And what it also does in the program is it gives, in my experience, I see Dad doing things, and then I see Michael doing things, and I see Dave doing things, and I get to gather all this wisdom in this gathering of men and disciples of God and dads to demonstrate that. And I think as we were kind of discussing it and thinking about it, I thought back about I started in the program when I was 12, so that was 12 years ago. And the lessons I learned from 12 to 18 were a bigger vision for my life than what I could experience then in those high school years. And they were lessons that equipped me for a life of following Jesus, not just instances. And I kind of relate it back to, like, if you are going to go on a long hike at home before you go out, you'll pull out a map or on your phone or whatever, and you'll map it out where I want to go. And really, you start by asking the question, where do I want to end up? And that's what this program does. It says, I want to grow up to be a biblical man. That's my destination. And this program helped to map out how to get there. And when you come up to a Y in the road or an intersection, this program taught me how to approach those questions, how to approach those situations. So that now that I'm married and have been for a couple of years, we will come up to intersections or issues or anything, and I've understood and been taught how to approach them. And they're not solutions, but it's how to think through these issues and how to approach them. And I believe it's saved us a lot of frustration, hurt, and we've been able to follow the Lord appropriately in those situations because I was taught how to prepare for them. And I think another big thing is just the common language, is I know how to communicate about issues regarding manhood. And I learned it through it being modeled in our home. And a unique thing too about having brothers who go through it is we're all in it together. We're all learning and all watching Dad. But then I also had great peers that I learned how to communicate about things with, and that was really valuable. And I think too, even though I started a long time ago, I'm not done with it, and I'm not going to be done with it for a long time. So yeah.
Yeah. So you've spent some of the most important formative years in terms of like transitioning from being a boy to being a man, through middle school and high school and college and early marriage, with this kind of baseline community, some common language, and some hooks to hang things on as life kind of came at you.
Yeah.
And it was all around this definition of biblical manhood, which
Yeah.
is great. I want to hear from Dave. Dave, you're involved in lots of things, but you've got two ministries that I would say you've given your life to, and one is scouting. We have a scouting troop here at Change Point, which has the same vision as the Modern Day Knights program, which is developing biblical manhood around this definition of biblical manhood, which, by the way, we should probably say out loud, right? A real man, R-E-A-L, a real man rejects passivity, expects God's greater reward, accepts responsibility, and leads courageously. And by the way, what I love about that definition is it doesn't matter what season your life in.
That's right.
You're in. You can apply that definition of biblical manhood to whatever context you face. I've tried to find the outlier where it doesn't fit, and I still can't. So anybody's found it, you got to let me know. But tell us about decades of your life dedicated to the formation of biblical men through scouting and through Knights.
Yeah, so I was really blessed to grow up in a home with a godly father and really a community of men in a church community that challenged me to do hard things and encouraged me along the way. I just feel really blessed to have had to be able to count, 18, 20 men, through my formative years that each invested something, of real value in my life. And so as like Chaz, as I have this baby in my arms and I'm thinking about, how I want to be a dad, and then Robert Lewis's book comes out I think I read it in 2000, about 2000, and when I was still in Arizona, and saw some real value, some real nuggets there about how to intentionally raise my sons. That was I would say my dad probably wasn't super intentional about that. He just did what his community had taught him along the way. But as communities have broken down in the last few years, that was a big question to me: is how am I going to raise my son? And the whole idea that Robert Lewis brought forth to be intentional about that, and that there was a way to be intentional about it. You didn't have to just kind of
Wing it and hope for the best.
And hope for the best.
Oh my
right.
goodness. Yeah.
Right. Absolutely. So that that was something that just really spoke to me at the time. And so I think it was in 2004. I brought my oldest son through the Modern Day Knights program with Titus's mentorship, and helped me come up with a plan for that. But before that, I'd seen the scouting program as also being something that was a very intentional way of imparting values and experiences,
right,
and skills, and in ways that I just couldn't see how. I didn't see how my boys were going to learn those kind of things and have those kind of experiences without it. So I got my sons involved in it, and then a couple of years later, we realized that Change Point really needed this kind of thing, and there was opportunity there. So some friends of mine and I put together a troop here, and scouting is a little different. Modern Day Knights, is all about supporting dads in their relationship with their sons, and helping them with a framework and launching dads into that and being there to support. Scouting is more, day to day. It's developing that community on a weekly and a day-to-day basis, so that those relationships are strengthened over time. Scouting isn't for everybody, but certainly it's something that allows a group of men and just a community to be able to speak into the life of young men with values. It's a values-based organization. So it's all about the values. Bottom line is it's all about the values. That's what's going to sustain our children into the next generation, and that's the basis of every good thing that I enjoy. Is the values that my parents put into me. So.
Yeah, we want to walk with you dads. We want to walk with you mentors through this. If what we're talking about is interesting to you, or it will be interesting to somebody that you know, we just want to encourage you next Sunday, the 21st at 1 o'clock here at Change Point in the hangar. We're just going to talk about the program. We'll be able to translate some of the nuance of like, okay, how do you get involved? What does the training for dads look like? What does the training for sons look like? And again, this is a program that has lasted for many, many years, and we're just really glad for the way that God has seemingly blessed this. And it's not just a Change Point program. We have people from churches all over Alaska. We actually have people that kind of fly up. I'll say it that way. People fly up to be a part of this from the lower 48. Lots of brothers and uncles and friends that come up. And if you know somebody who's a fatherless boy, doesn't have an active kind of biological dad, God is in the business of putting family together. He puts the lonely into families and often works through spiritual parents. I know that my wife and I have the privilege of being spiritual parents for people in our lives that maybe their kind of biological parents haven't been able to be there. And God's just in the business of kind of working out community. And so, again, if this is interesting to you, please join us next week, the 21st. You could also check on Group Finder. There's just an information button there. You just click it. If you've got questions, you could send us an email. But thank you for hearing us and for letting us share probably one of the most significant opportunities for young men in and through the church. And we're excited about that. So thanks for joining us. If you want some more information, join us for our information meeting, or you can always reach out, communitylife, changepointalaska.com. That's the email you can email, and we'll read it and we'll get back to you. So thanks for joining us. Thanks for letting us share about Modern Day Nights. Have a great day.